Okay, let's start it. This is the Paxton Finance Committee meeting, July 6th, 2020. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. And the first thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes of our meeting of June 15th. I emailed them to everybody. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look at them. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second for discussion.
Second for discussion. Any changes, any modifications, any corrections?
I got two questions and maybe one correction. The questions I have are on page 1. The 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th bullet down. Transfer 3,000 from central purchasing. Actually, your comment, Rich. These are for prior year transfers before major fuel cost increases. I'm not sure what that means.
These are prior year transfers before major, geez, I don't know what that means.
I took that in as we were talking. I thought you made a comment about,
Okay.
you know, these were the prior year. I mean, we can just delete that comment if it's not accurate.
Yeah, I don't know what prior year transfers means.
Yeah.
Okay, let's delete that whole line. I mean, it's pretty obvious that we've had tremendous fuel costs increase over the last year, and we've had to pay for those increased fuel costs. So of course, we're going to have a problem with that. So I'm not sure that comment's needed. Okay, you had another question?
Yeah, the second one is 2 more bullets down. Transfers 7,000 from fire equipment.
Yes.
Heather's comment is making reference to, I think, the previous transfer and not to the one where it's situated. It makes reference to the previous transfer, but I'm just wondering where it should be.
Heather, would you have comment on this?
I don't recall which transfer I was referencing on that piece.
Well, the one that it's under is having to do with compensation, and you're making a comment about collections. So I think the comment belongs in the
Collections.
item above.
Yeah, the comment would have been about I think the collection side had to do with the ambulance and the billing costs
Right.
for coastal.
Right.
Yeah, coastal doesn't have anything to do with the fire department.
Well,
Well, it
coastal,
does. It has to do with the ambulance.
The ambulance part of it, but not the fire department part of it.
I think it belongs up above.
Okay, so why don't we transfer that over to the,
Put it up above.
And on the second page at the bottom, just for the record, I believe it's 1938 and as opposed to 1958. I was making reference to the initial stab at the bylaws, which go all the way back to 38.
the sample header. Mr. Benton will send bylaws to Heather for review prior to submission to the select board. Does the sample header, what did you refer to on the sample header? I don't remember.
Sample header is where we're making reference to all the amendments that have taken place since 1938, 1966, 1973.
Yeah.
So there's no reference in the header to 1958, but there is to 1938. So,
Well, that just to say 1938 would imply that there has been nothing been done since 1938.
no, that's not what I'm suggesting. That's what I think there's reference to a date that's nowhere in the existing bylaws. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So if we're going to make
Right.
reference to it, I believe it's 1938.
Okay, we can do that. No problem. Does anybody have any objection to any of these changes? Okay, is that all, Mark?
Yep.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve this. Mark, would you change that to a motion to approve the revision of the minutes to 6:15?
As amended, as revised, yes.
As amended, yep. Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
As opposed? No one opposed? Minutes pass.
Richard, I have a question. If we're
Yes.
doing a Zoom meeting, do we have to take a roll call vote?
We could, except for the fact if everybody voted yes and nobody voted no, then obviously everybody has voted yes. So would you prefer, would you feel more comfortable to call a roll call?
I'm just trying to go by what the rules say.
Okay. So. Here, let's see, Mark, yes or no?
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Kim. Kim, are you there?
I think
Oh,
he
yeah.
already voted.
Sorry, I thought you were saying Tim.
Yeah, are you going to?
No, we have
vote?
a Tim and a Kim. Yes, we're fine.
Oh, okay. Tony,
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay, that's everybody. Any objections? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, second thing on the agenda are the transfers, 2 more transfers that we have. I sent them out to everybody. The first transfer was for $3,160.67. This is going from snow removal, salt and sand, to snow removal equipment to cover the cost of snow equipment during fiscal year 22 season. Is there a motion to approve the transfer of $3,160.67? Nobody moves it?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Rich,
Yes.
after the second motion, can we have discussion?
Yes, we can have discussion if you want.
It says to cover the cost of snow equipment. And I see that account is in a deficit position, and I see that we're transferring an exact amount to make it balance and make it zero. But what was the cost of snow equipment? Did we have repairs? Did we buy new equipment? Did we lease equipment? It's
believe it was
almost like I'm
blades.
looking for a little bit better definition or description as
blades.
to what the reason is.
So would you like to have Travis in next week to explain this all to him?
No, I'm just wondering if anybody on the Zoom meeting can add something to it.
Nope. Jeff, can you add anything? You're on mute.
No, nothing to add at this point right now.
Okay.
Rich,
Yes,
I believe it's the snow blades. Unless Heather knows differently, but that was my understanding.
Okay.
The snow blades.
Good answer.
Which
Is
are
that
the
a good enough answer?
big blades that go onto the trucks.
Okay.
It was new snow blades or just the sharpening or maintenance of the
No,
snow
replacement.
replacement? Okay, thank you.
So once again, all in favor? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Mark,
Yay.
Jeremy,
Yay.
Tim,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous, plus me. Okay, next is $459.76 from the town administrator account 1123 to the select board administrator account 1122. And the reason for that is additional hours of work during the transition of new town administrator. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'd like to make a motion for discussion.
Okay, what discussion?
I
Open it
would
up.
just, for the reason for the request, additional hours work during transition of new town administrator. I'm assuming this is payroll. I just wanted to know who was it for.
It's for Donna.
Thank you.
Yeah, because that is the select board administrator. Actually, I think her name is, title is executive
Assistant.
assistant.
So, Rich, following up on the discussion, I don't begrudge the additional hours of the additional pay, but wasn't she just given a huge raise and a big step up at a recent select board meeting in May? Has that taken effect yet, or is that taking effect in July?
That'll take effect in July.
So this is through June 30th?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the year-end transfer.
Rich, I think
Yes.
Jeff posted in the chat here that Neil Bagdis is trying to get permission to enter in the meeting.
Oh, here it is. Yep. Sorry, I didn't. There we go. Sorry, Neil, you were up in the corner.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mark, yeah, nay.
Yay.
Jeremy,
Yay.
Tim,
Yay.
Kim,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
and myself. Okay, that approves the transfer. Okay, now another thing was added to consider special town meeting, warrant article. The warrant article is the security system and cameras at Paxton Center School. This was approved. The town folk indicated that they had a desire to purchase this equipment for security in the school. They did that in the town election, but we now need to provide funding for it. And so Article 1 is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to install a new security system and cameras at the Paxton Center School or take any action related thereto. Is there a motion for this?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Okay, that's what we need. Any discussion on this? Mark,
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I'm not, I don't want to take a brick or a bow, but I'm probably the one that's in the middle of this more than anybody, but I'm also very confused. And let me make my way through my confusion. On the thing that you sent out, Rich, and maybe it's just a perfunctory issue, but how is it that the select board members have signed it, but they haven't opined as to their recommendation? That's confusing to me.
I have received this and we are discussing it, how this is handled with respect to paperwork. I'll have to defer to Heather.
So sometimes I'm trying to remember back. I think that was the one meeting I wasn't at, if I remember correct. So
Right.
it's very possible the board just didn't get to taking the vote, or if they did, they may not have marked up the document, because I had everything ready to go before the meeting, so it could be published as long as the board approved it. And it's not uncommon for a board to say, to be determined or to opine on it later. It's not that they were objecting. I believe all board members are in favor of this article. It was an administrative thing that it didn't make it on the warrant. But it's obviously, they're obviously in support of it. It's the select board's warrant and they put it forward to town meeting.
Well, and I think you make an important point, Heather. I want to go on record as saying I am 1,000% in favor of the project for now the second time, maybe even the third time or fourth time, because I serve on the CIPC committee. But our questioning shouldn't call into question our support of the project. So you make mention that the board, it's not unusual for them to approve something and then make a determination later, but in the landmark article recently, board members brought up the idea of where are we on funding this through ARPA? And Select Board Member Kirk Hughes made mention, why are we voting on this if we have opera fund money? And another board member went on record as saying we do have opera money, but at this point, the opera committee hasn't voted on it. So I guess the question is, where's the board on this and where's the opera committee on this in terms of its funding?
So
It
it is,
seems like we're being asked to opine, and yet I'm not sure that anybody else has closed the door on what their position is, including opera, including the Board of Selectmen, and to a lesser extent, even the CIPC. The other issue is that this article that we're being asked to vote on is not the actual article that was on the ballot question. That spoke to a Proposition 2.5 override, and this makes no mention of it. And I understand that technically we don't have to, but what does that mean? And what is that telling the people at the special town meeting? There seems to be more behind how this article reads, and I don't know if, even though we can do what we're doing by way of Mass General law, if that's the right thing that we want to do in the spirit of openness and transparency. So once again, I want to go on record as saying I'm 1,000% in favor of the project. We at CIPC and others behind me tonight may invoke the fact that with the Texas shooting, this is not the type of thing to fool with. We understand that fully, but this is a finance committee too. And I think we need to figure out who's the lead on this, where's opera on this, where's the board on this, before we take a vote on it. And I would remind everybody that the finance committee voted against this 4-2 the last time it was brought to us. That doesn't mean that we can't change our vote. It just seems to me that there's a whole lot of discussion that should surround this particular issue as opposed to just unilaterally approving it and moving it forward. So, and I'll end by saying I don't want anybody to misinterpret my remarks. I'm fully, squarely, 1,000% behind the project. I don't particularly think that we're going about it in the right process, and I don't like the funding mechanisms that are being kicked to the side, kicked to the curb, when in fact we may very well fund this thing and be able to fund this thing with ARPA. With the ARPA committee hasn't met. The board hasn't met again on it to discuss it. It just seems like there's a lot of balls in the air, that's all.
Heather,
Thanks, Rich. So I can give you a couple pieces, and I can only give you pieces of information post May 9th, right? Because that's when I came to the table here. So most recent as I was at, the Capital Improvement Committee did approve moving forward with the article and recommended it for approval for the town meeting. There is a vote on file on record in the minutes. That was what happened. I was at the meeting. The language of the article is, you remember it being on the original town meeting and annual town meeting in May. It said contingent upon the Prop 2.5 ballot vote. When I sent this to the Department of Revenue and Legal for their review saying, okay, we have that ballot vote, now we're going back to town meeting, They removed that language because it's no longer relevant, right? The contingency has been removed because you already have the yes piece of the vote. You're just going back now for the appropriation. So the language is what it is. I understand what Mark's saying. I agree. Sometimes it's confusing, but it's just going back to the town and saying, okay, you've been to the ballot. You've already approved this as a one-time override for this amount of money. And now we just need approval to actually spend that money, please. That's the request. Again, I think, the last time the ARPA committee met, I think the estimated balance was somewhere a little bit over 100,000 was the estimate of what was going to be remaining. And we have a major project we need to tackle. It has been something that's on their list, and it's something that's harder to get funding for. And that's the MS4 permitting. Fuss and O'Neill is the consultant we've been working with, and their current proposal to get us up to compliance, to remove the potential of us being fined on a daily basis, I think circa around 25,000 or so for being out of compliance, is about $136,000. The DPW had some funds this past fiscal. They were able to get started on that to the tune of, if I recall correctly, around 20,000. But there's still a significant amount of money left to appropriate and to expend for that piece. And I think that's where, ARPA's last conversations were. I would agree that, in the future, maybe we need to talk about process a little bit more for some of these articles. But at this point, the townspeople have spoken. They've gone to the ballot. They said, this is what we want. And I think it's our obligation to move forward with it. I think the fact that the select board may not have voted at their last meeting, or maybe they voted and it didn't get updated in the document to approve the article, I don't think that's relevant to today's discussion. Today's discussion is the finance committee, and as the advisors of the finance to the townspeople, is whether or not you guys approve this article, regardless of who else approves this article. Do you approve this article? Do you think this is in the right and best interest of the taxpayer to move forward with this? I think that's the decision before the finance committee, not going into, well, did the select board formally say yes? And is that what's going to say on the motion? Where is the ARPA funds? I think it is. Is it in the best interest of the town? Yes or no, according to the finance committee, to move forward with this funding piece?
Any other comments? Any replies? I think the bottom line is that the town wants it. If this doesn't get approved, they won't get it. And we won't have the security system that in place for the school. It says, or take any action related thereto, would to me suggest, however you get that $50,000, you need to get it. But that's my point of view. Any other comments?
Rich, Jeff Kent here. I'm just a member of public, 890
Yes.
Pleasant Street. But I respectfully disagree with this requirement. I'll go back to my previous life and my experience, and I'll use a DOD term of force protection. I think, and again, this is my opinion, but it's based on experience, that purchasing cameras for the school is a reaction to current events. But my question that has never been answered is, how does that security system, which only provides early warning and detection, how does that tie into the overall protection plan and reaction plan if there's ever an event at Paxton Center School? So that's one reason why I think this needs further investigations and discussions, and we have time to do that. Number two is I'm totally against the funding. I mean, it just baffles me that 15 years ago, I stood up in a town meeting and said, when the budget for the school was at 68 million, mark my words, in 8 to 10 years, it's going to be 100 million. And here we are. And mark my words, in less than 8 years, it's going to be over 200 million. You're telling me that the school cannot come up with $50,000 of our tax dollars to offset this cost? I get it, the regional school district and the threshold, it's a great strategy. Let's put it at 35,000. Once it's over that, then the member town has to assume the cost. Very good strategy. No one can convince me that this is a valid requirement, why it cannot be a phased project. Threshold is under that dollar amount. And then finally, why are we doing an annual town meeting in the middle of July when individuals are on vacation, are not available? Historically, we do it in September. Be right, but the perception is that the agenda is this passed and we're going to do it any way we can do it. Thank you.
If I remember right, the reason that we're doing this in July is because it was not mentioned in a report by the Capital Improvement Committee. So that is the reason we're doing it. Carol?
I was just going to say that the reason we're doing it July instead of September is so that the funding is available to get the work done prior to the kids going back to school. Because initially I wanted the meeting in September, but then after the events that happened recently, I went along with the fact that July is the best time to do it. So we want to get the funding in place prior to the kids going back to school. And that was the reason for July. We're not trying to pull any wool over anybody's eyes. We just want to get this funding.
I'm confused, Carol. Is it to get the funding or not to disrupt the academic year?
Nope, it's to get the work done so that the kids will go back to school and hopefully the cameras will be in place.
So it has, now, again, I have my own opinion and perception. And anyway, I'll
Well, that was the criteria at our Board of Selectmen's meeting. That's why we did it in July.
So why didn't you go for ARPA dollars?
Because we, as Heather's already explained, the ARPA funding is being tied up at the moment, or we anticipate it being tied up.
What do we pay for the signs? For the digital signs in front of the public safety building that we can no longer go into in the town hall.
And what has that got to do with this article that we're trying to approve?
Well, I'm trying to show where's the priorities.
The ARPA committee voted on those items. They were put forth to the
Can you answer the question though, what did we expend for those two signs?
I believe it was 50 for one and maybe 30 for another one, but
So $80,000 for signs.
yes.
Okay, just want to know where the priorities are.
Carol, picking up on your point as to whether or not it has any relevance, I respect that point, but I think your answers that you just gave to Jeff were incorrect. The signs were not 30 and 50. They were
said it off the top of my
substantially
head.
more than that.
Sorry, I said up top of my head. I ain't got it in front of me.
Well,
And
being a member of the opera committee, I think you should know what they are because I'm not a
on the
member
ARPA
of it.
committee.
And I do know what they are.
I'm not on the
And
ARPA.
Jeff raises a good point. Where were the priorities? Where I'm conflicted is Heather raises a good point. The town has spoken, but here's the footnote to that. They didn't speak at town meeting because they weren't allowed to, because it was improper to vote on the article. And then when they voted on the ballot question, it didn't have all the transparent information as to what the actual tax impact was. That's where I'm bothered, that they don't know exactly what they voted for and what it's going to cost them. I think that's a responsibility of our transparency in the process. Heather said, well, maybe the process ought to be improved in the future. I couldn't agree more, but that's where I'm stuck right now.
Okay, Mark,
Because we need to make a decision in the middle of what's been a terrible process.
let Carol respond.
Well, let me finish, Rich.
Well, you never finish.
Yeah, that's not very funny, Rich, and you
keep
can
going. All
apologize
right.
for that remark.
Keep going. You've been
I'm
going
done
for a
now.
while. I'd like Carol to get in on this. Carol,
So Mark is incorrect in the fact that we can put any number in a ballot. We cannot put any number tax impact in a ballot question. And that question has been questioned by Jeff Kent in the past and put in writing, and he's since refuted that because he realized that that was incorrect. So the ballot question was correct. At previous Board of Selectmen meetings, the tax impact was mentioned when we was talking about the articles. And I know that for a fact. In fact, Jeremy commented on that. At town meeting, we were not able to vote on this article because the Capital Improvement Committee hadn't included it in their report. There was a remedy for that, which the Capital Improvement Committee did not opine upon and did not actually go ahead and do, but there was a remedy for us to actually vote on it at town meeting, but we didn't do that. So now we're back at trying to get the funding approved for the cameras. And the priorities for the ARPA committee came before the ARPA committee at that time, and I'm not on the ARPA committee anymore, and I can't remember every number. I'm sorry. I have other things to think about, but I wasn't saying it was 80,000 to downplay it. I just can't remember the numbers, and I'm sorry. But the cameras never came to the ARPA committee. They came as a project from the school committee, and that's where, as a town, anything over 35,000 has to be put forth to the town, and that's what we did. So the
I'm going to take exception to that, Carol.
Excuse me.
The cameras did come before the ARPA committee. I have documented meeting minutes where you discussed cameras at ARPA meetings. It was brought before the committee and it was passed. It was sent back to the school for more information.
Which never came. So it didn't come before us to vote on. And I've lost my train of thought was I was going to add to that before you cut me off. So I'll finish on that.
Are there anybody else have any comments on this?
Yeah, just picking up on Jeremy's point, it makes no sense that the ARPA committee couldn't opine on it because they didn't have enough information.
No.
But the CIPC committee did opine on it with the exact same amount of depreciation, and we put it forward. If we put it forward, ARPA could have funded it. That's my position. And they missed an opportunity to do so.
And now we're here waiting for it to go to town meeting.
Well, I know that, Carol. Now we're here, but you know, we got to learn from the past in order to not repeat the mistakes in the future.
All right. There's been lots of mistakes in the future and the past, so or will be mistakes made, but that's the way it is. But the job of the finance committee tonight is to approve or disapprove the article. Take your vote. If you disapprove it, fine. It'll go to town meeting with a disapproval.
Okay, are there any other comments on it? I wanted to make one comment, is that it was pointed out that the money, the $50,000 that is suggested here is our tax money. The ARPA money is also our tax money. It is all tax money, every bit of it. Okay, now are there any other comments? Hearing none. It's been moved and seconded. And so what I need now is approval or disapproval. Tony, approval or disapprove?
Approve.
Kimberly,
Approved.
what was that?
Approved.
Approve, okay. Jennifer,
Approve.
Mark,
Abstain,
abstain,
yes.
Tim,
Approve.
Seth. Oh, he's not here. I thought Seth was here. No, Seth's not here. Stephen,
I abstain.
Jeremy.
Stan,
Okay, we have 4 approvals and 3 abstentions. Actually, 5 approvals. I say yes, so the motion passes. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is something that was added having to do with the recreation department. And the reason for that, let me read it first if I can find it here. Okay, we're voting to increase the revolving account expenditure limit for recreation. Okay, in the original document that was voted at the town meeting, the annual town meeting, the revolving funds of various organizations in town were approved, and these were the limits of what they were allowed to be. Now, for recreation, if I remember right, it was set at about $120,000. Well, apparently, there has been a tremendous use of recreational opportunities in town, such that the number of people who participated has been greatly increased. And so consequently, the amount of money that they have collected as a result of their various fees for these various events has increased. And if I remember right, it was something like $26,000, something of that nature. So essentially what we needed to do was not set the limit about 120,000. We need to set the limit much higher than that in order to allow them to utilize this money. So we are asking for the approval of the Finance Committee, and this is from the organization Recreation, to increase the fiscal 2022 annual expenditure limit of the Recreation Revolving Fund from $120,000 to $200,000. And as I said, the reason for this increase is because the popularity of the recreational activities has greatly increased, and the number of people participating in these events has greatly increased. So is there a motion to approve this increase in annual expenditure limit from 120,000 to 200,000? Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to discuss.
Like to make a motion for what?
To discuss.
Oh, to
I'll
discuss.
second it for discussion.
Second, okay, for discussion. Okay.
Now, I understand, Rich, clearly that Recreation is saying that they've got more activity, more programs, more participation. Do we have anything firm on that? Any numbers? I'm not saying that I doubt rec. I just don't see, our population hasn't increased. Their number of programs really hasn't increased. I just wanted to know where all this, that's a pretty substantial sum. You're looking at increasing this by 80%. I just wanted to know what these actual numbers are.
Well, they just increased it to 200,000 as a random. That isn't they didn't increase it by $80,000 in the year. I think it only increased something like $25,000 or $30,000. And they don't have an increase in the number of programs. They have a increase in the number of people who are actually part of this. Heather, you have a comment.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about here. So this is the revolving fund. So every year at town meeting, we vote to set the limits on each of the revolving funds. So you have the recreation revolving fund, and I think there's one for the COA and Paxton days. And what these funds are is the money essentially passes through. So you can only raise money for a certain reason and expend it for a certain reason. So for recreation, all of the charges for all of their programs go into this fund, and all of the costs and expenses relative to those programs come out of that fund. So every year we anticipate how much it is, and it doesn't matter. None of this money moves over to the general fund. It stays in the revolving. So the only use of this fund can be expended on these purposes for recreation programs. This year, we just had more people, I think, attend some of the programs than we've had in the past. To Rich's point, Jeremy, I don't know the number. I can probably get it from Kathy and forward it on to you guys of what they're seeing for numbers this year. But because of the number of people participating, their expenses also go up. And that's what we're seeing here is the costs for the year. And this is for FY22. So this is for the fiscal year that just passed. That's why there's a need for a vote to actually make sure we authorize the need for this. Larissa just noticed this the other day, or we would have brought this to your attention back in June when we saw the number up, but they had just got their revenue situated for the end of May, and they noticed it was increased. The reason for the increase to an arbitrary number that's much higher, to Rich's point of 200, is to make sure we cover ourselves, because the revenues haven't all come in and the expenses haven't all gone out yet for last fiscal year. We just want to make sure the number's high enough. I don't think I directly answered your question, Jeremy. I can find the answers. I just don't have the answers on me today for that. But I hope that helps a little bit with understanding how the account works and what's going on.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Steve,
Recreation revolving account, 120,000. It's now going to be in the proposal to increase it to 200,000. So an $80,000 increase. What is the impact of the taxpayer base relative to that number?
none, zero. This is the money that they get from individuals who participate in their programs. Carol?
Rich, I think what we may not have remembered to do is to increase the amount, because this past year was the first year of the before and after program at this Paxton Centre School, and we wouldn't have had a clear number of how many was taking part. So that could be one of the reasons why there's an additional revenue. Also, the summer program is very popular, probably because, kids haven't been going to camps because of COVID. And I know for a fact that the camps are full. So Kathy has got a really large camp. And with what comes with that is the revenue from that. Obviously, the expenses are going out as well, but it does up that revenue figure. So like I said, the before and after program is the first year of that was FY22. So that's probably why we're seeing more revenue in that account.
That makes sense. The only other question that I had is, whereas this was Article 10 at the annual town meeting where the people voted to approve, does this have to go to special town meeting to be approved as well?
No, the only other approval for the change goes to the select board. So according to Mass General laws, and I don't have the number, but Rich, I think Larissa might have quoted it for you in the email. She cites the MGL that requires an approval of both the select board.
Chapter 44, section 53E 1/2.
That is the revolving account, yeah.
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 Okay.
Rich, can
Mark.
I get a clarification to follow up on Jeremy? I'm not clear. I have the town warrant right here. Article 11.
Mhm.
Recreation, we had to approve $120,000 for the revolving account at the annual town meeting. My question is, if we're changing it to 200,000, why don't we have to have an article that has to go before the special town meeting? Why can this somehow just be decided on at the finance committee level and it doesn't have to be an article to go to the special town meeting like the original one had to go to the annual town meeting? I can't follow the logic on that.
Rich, you've got the Mass General law?
Yeah, it's right in the language. Rich, did she quote the Mass General law? She just gave you a copy? Or
No, I just have the reference, that's all.
Okay, I can pull it up real quick. Just give me a second, Mark, but it cites directly in the MGL of if you need to amend the number, you go there. And do note, this is for FY22, so the fiscal year that just ended before,
Oh, wait,
before we close our books.
the quote is down at the bottom of my email. In any fiscal year, the limit on the amount that may be spent from a revolving fund may be increased with the approval of the city council or mayor in a city or with the approval of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee in a town. That's the exact.
There's your answer.
Rich, what email are you making reference to? Was that sent to all the finance committee members?
No, I just got it this afternoon when I found out this afternoon that we did a revolving account increase, that's all.
So it's an email that you received, not that you sent.
Yeah, it's an email that I received, not that I sent.
Can you send that to everyone?
Yeah, I suppose so. I'll have to scan it. Any other discussion on this?
The only other clarification, excuse me, that I asked, Heather, you said this is for FY22?
Correct.
So we're voting to improve, to increase from 120 to 200K just to cover what happened last year.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a very good point of clarification. It's not, because the warrant article was for 22, 23. What we're voting on is the fiscal year that just ended.
Right.
Okay, okay.
Confusing.
That's where, yeah, my confusion, I had understood what the revised meeting minutes that we were voting to increase it for fiscal year 23. That's my fault.
Any further discussion on this? Any comments? Hearing none, it's been moved and seconded to approve this. Is there, let's see. Let me. Okay, yay or nay? Tony?
Yay.
Rich,
Yes.
point of order, I don't believe there was a motion made. There was a motion for discussion and a second, but I don't believe there was a motion made for the actual
Is
vote.
there a motion to approve this article? Or I don't even know what it is. What would you call it?
It's a revolving fund.
Revolving fund. Approve the revolving fund
increase.
increase. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. Now. Tony, yay?
Yay.
Kim?
Yay.
Jennifer?
Yay.
Mark?
Yes,
Timothy?
Yay.
Steve?
Yay.
Jeremy?
Yay.
Okay, and I'm yes, so that's unanimous approval for this. Okay, that's the end of our agenda. Now, I was told that there was a good possibility that there is going to be some more transfers done. And so I was thinking of having a meeting next week, either Wednesday or Thursday. I'll contact you later. What I'm interested in, if there is anyone who wants to discuss something other than just simply those transfers, please let me know so that I can put it into the agenda so that it'll be done properly like that. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Any comments? Mark?
yeah, Rich, I'd like to speak to the very point you just made, because I sent an email out on June 29th, listing a number of items that I wanted to have included in the agenda, and you categorically rejected them. And I categorically reject, you're rejecting them. So why is going forward any different than what I did last week? And they were all items that had been previously discussed, so they could fall under old business. And you just chose it upon yourself not to put them on the agenda, and I'm interested to know why. Because I do know why, because you sent me a private email. My email went to everybody. Your response just went to me. And I extended the same courtesy, and I only responded to you. But as you know, I didn't like your response. So why were my legitimately good bylaws, Economic Development Committee, financial policies, why were they not put on this evening's agenda?
Well, number one, with the financial policy, as I indicated to you and others, that it was the entire fiscal policy had not been completed yet. That was only one portion of it that was taken care of. So what I was thinking of was Heather was in the process of going over those documents, and I was waiting for her to finish with them and get them back to me so that we can discuss it in totality instead of just taking a section of it that had not gone through the mill yet with Heather, and we could go through it at that time. I forgot what the other things were.
Well, let me just respond to that.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine, but why not have that discussion at a meeting when a member of the committee who has a prerogative to put something on the agenda, you can speak to it when it's on the agenda as opposed to be judgmental and opine not to put it on the agenda. Because I don't agree with you in terms of what you've just said. We're not going to be asked to look at the entire policy and all the sections. We're going to be asked to look at one section. And what's wrong with looking at it now? I totally disagree with your judgment and the authority that you exercised as chairman. I think as a member, I have the right to put something on the agenda. If it's not unlawful and it's not otherwise inappropriate and it comes under old business, I have the right to put it on, and I think you have an obligation to include it and then discuss as you just have when it's on the agenda. Not categorically deny it, which is what you did on 3 of the instances.
It would have been nice to put it on the agenda, but if we don't have the document for everybody to read and give them enough time to read it, then there's absolutely nothing to discuss. Secondly,
I'm a member of
secondly,
that
I
working
was,
group. I had plenty to discuss
now
with
you're
them. I would be
overriding the
happy to bring
chair.
them up to date.
okay.
I don't agree with you.
Or
Ray.
anybody else have any comments, please?
Well, there was another item, the Economic Development Committee. You
Okay.
opined that we have no purview under that. I completely disagree with that. First of all, that particular committee was first mentioned here at the Finance Committee. We have every right to opine on that. And you said, no, we do not. And I said, yes, we do. We do. They're now formulating what the particular membership makeup is going to be. I think a Finance Committee member should be a member of that committee. Someone's going to say, well, they're not allowed to be that. And I'm saying, yes, they are. If the Economic Development Committee requires that a member from Planning or Zoning or Finance Committee to be on the committee, then we can be on the committee. That's a discussion that this committee should have, not for you to unilaterally dismiss it from being an agenda item. So I think you're inappropriate. So in my regard, you're 0 for 2.
And actually, that committee was put together, the suggestion for that committee was put together almost a year ago. It had absolutely nothing to do that was said at the Finance Committee whatsoever. It's just Kirk had made the comment and he said that he was going to put it together. And to the best of my knowledge, and I was not involved with it, it was not done at that point. But in any case, having to do with economic development, the Master Plan Committee was put into effect some 15 years ago. And that created the Master Plan Implementation Committee, which dealt with economic development for 2 years after that. Finance Committee was not involved in that in any way, shape, or form either. So it is the committee's business to go through it, and then the Finance Committee can review what they've done. But in any case, it was my goal with this meeting tonight to do 2 transfers and the warrant article. That's what my goal was, and get it over with, because it was a Zoom meeting in order to allow a number of people who are not able to attend in person to attend. If it came up in the future, that would be fine. As I just said, I was going to have a meeting next week. If you wish to have that at that time, fine, but I don't think anybody can get up to speed on any of those subjects in time to discuss it on Wednesday. There's plenty of time to discuss this. There's no action.
So I disagree with that. First of all, I'm looking at the minutes of March 29th with Seth Peters says, the
Yeah,
Finance
I know.
Committee should consider starting an Economic Development Committee.
Yeah,
That's where the origination of this, that's where the birth of this is.
that's not.
The Board of Selectmen had a bylaws committee and they decided to dispense with that and not in its place, but as part of that, making an Economic Development Committee. It's possible that the Board of Selectmen are going to meet Monday on July 11th to discuss what the membership makeup is. What good is it going to be if we meet on July 13th when the membership makeup has already taken place? So I saw an urgency, I saw a timing issue, and as a member, I have a prerogative to put it on the table, not for you to unilaterally dismiss it, which is what you did.
Are there any other comments?
I'm going to make a comment, and I'm going to say that regardless of what you thought was appropriate or inappropriate, it should have been, you should have replied to us, Richard, with your thoughts and your justifications for not including what Mark wanted to include, to all of us, because we all got Mark's email. I think that if you're going to make the decision not to include it, tell us why.
Carol?
I think if you start having conversations over email, then you're going to violate the open meeting law. So I think, Rich, you did very right not to include all the committee. And the Board of Selectmen aren't meeting on Monday. So you've still got
Yeah,
time.
but there was a time when I thought that they might, and what if they did? I'd rather be safe than sorry. I don't want to meet after the Board of Selectmen meets and decides what the membership should be. In fact, I think I'd like to make a motion that we go on record that a member of the Finance Committee be a member of the Economic Development Committee. And when they draft the Economic Development membership, that it include the fact that, just like the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, they require somebody from the Assessors Department be on it, and they require somebody from the Finance Committee to be on it. I think we should make the same recommendation out of Economic Development.
Carol?
That's a bylaw. That's why the recommendation for those people.
I was going to say that they abide by a bylaw. There is no bylaw for the economic.
Well, we can
development.
find a million reasons for us not to be on it, just like we found a million reasons for us not to be on opera. Let's find a way to yes as opposed to a way to no. I think that the opera committee would have benefited greatly if a member from finance was on. And I fear the same thing's going to happen with the Economic Development Committee. I think somebody from the Finance Committee should be on it while it's being developed right now. It doesn't have any bylaws, so therefore it can devise their own bylaws to include that inclusion. That's my point.
Steve?
I'm confused by Carol's response relative to you responding to all of the team for what was sent. She said it's something about it violated some process or law. Can I get a clarification? Is open communication among the committee prohibited by some law? That's
Yes.
exactly what you implied.
It's called the open meeting law violation. Yes. So if Rich responded back to an email and included everybody on it, he's having a discussion amongst the group, the committee, and that's an open.
That's illegal.
An open meeting law violation. And
Okay, Mark.
So what
No,
would have
Carol,
been a proper
continue.
way?
Go.
What would have been a proper way to handle that? So to Jeremy's point, we would have been communicated to without violating a law.
a meeting. So
The open meeting law violation says that you can't communicate to a quorum without all members present, correct?
Well, a quorum.
Right.
Yeah, you can't discuss it in a quorum kind of a situation.
So if every member of the committee was in that communication, you would have had a quorum.
sorry, I missed that.
I missed, what did you say? Steve?
I said if everyone was copied on, if every committee member of finance was on that communication and responded to by reply all, you would have had a quorum, would you have not?
Yes. And that's,
Well, then how is that a violation of the meeting law?
Because it's not an open public, it's not an open meeting of a public body.
Heather.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page here, so open meeting law states that a quorum of the members, so more than 50%, cannot communicate and deliberate outside of an open meeting or a posted meeting, right? So you have to be careful, because if there's any matter that can come before this board, you have to be careful of the communications. If you're just saying, you know, if there's an email to everyone that says, hey, Rich, can you add the discussion about trees on the next agenda, right? It's an agenda item, or it's talking about scheduling. Hey, we're all available next Thursday. Can we do a meeting? That's one thing, but what happens, to Carol's point, is when you start replying, it very quickly often changes from, hey, let's add that agenda item, to, Rich saying, I'm in support of that agenda item, or Tim saying, I'm not in support of that agenda item, or Jeremy saying, I like the trees with the green leaves, but not the brown leaves. And before you know it, you started having an actual deliberation via email and a direct violation of the open meeting law. So it's being cautious. So Steve, I think you might have confused it backwards, thinking you can do it as long as there's a quorum, but it's actually the quorum that makes the violation. So you can have, go ahead, Jeremy, I'm sorry.
Again, I think as this was that I was adding something to an agenda, a meeting agenda. As long as that was what was addressed, that's not a violation.
But the
It's not.
question was, why didn't Rich respond to all? That was the question.
The question that Mark asked was, I'd
No.
like these items put on the agenda for the next meeting. The
Yes.
reply could have been, I will put them on or I won't put them on. That's not an open meeting violation.
I'd be careful.
But if I said it to everybody at the same time, then it would be.
It is not. A meeting agenda discussion does not fall under open meeting law.
It might lead to a discussion.
But anything could lead to a discussion, Rich. You
Not
guys
every-
are playing
Not
out
if
the
you're,
minutia.
not if you're only dealing with one person.
Oh, this is insane.
Let
Okay,
let
now,
me,
Mark,
let me-
Mark,
let me
Mark,
clarify, the
Mark,
question,
you made a motion to recommend that committee include a finance committee member. Is there a second on that?
Second,
Okay. So now, did you want to discuss that? Or have a vote on it?
I'd like to take a vote.
Okay, all in favor of recommending to the, what's it called? Economic Development Plan Committee?
To the select board, to the select board.
Our recommendation to the select board is for them to assign a finance committee member to the Economic Development Committee. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, Tony,
We need a second or are we voting?
a second. I'm sorry, we need a second. Oh, no, we have a second. Oh,
it was
Jeremy
second.
gave us a second already.
Okay,
Tony, yes or no?
yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes,
Tim,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Jeremy.
yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, the recommendation will be made to the select board to include a finance committee member on the Economic Development Committee. Okay. Now, is there any other thing that we have to discuss this afternoon, this evening?
yes, there is. One of
Okay.
the other items on my ask to be on the agenda was an update on the bylaws. You recall at our last meeting, we submitted them to Heather. I was at a select board meeting, so I kind of know where they stand, but I'm not sure every other member knows where they stand. That's why it was a worthy candidate to be included on the agenda so that we can get an update on it. So I'm going to ask whether you or Heather can opine as to the status of the Finance Committee bylaw revisions.
We gave it to Heather and Heather was going over it. And then after she was done with it, it was going to the select board, if I remember right. No, to the town council.
So I think, Rich, if I recall our last meeting, I had asked the finance committee, I asked if the select board had any modifications or suggestions to changes, if you wanted to continue to proceed, but I believe it was the opinion of the board of this committee that if there was anything that was going to be changed, that you wanted to come back and it would go forward on a future town meeting. I was not at the select board meeting, but my understanding, as it having not been on the approved warrant, I did submit 2 warrants, one with, one without, just so they had all the materials they needed since I was not there that day, but Carol was, so Carol might be able to update that piece in the conversation.
Carol?
Yep. So when it came before the board for inclusion in the town meeting, article, the warrant, Selectman Yules made a motion not to include it, and I seconded it. It didn't get included. That was it.
Carol, can you repeat that?
At the meeting, Selectman Yules made a motion not to include the article for the bylaw in the warrant, and I seconded it, and that was it. It was approved. All three didn't include it. There was no discussion on it.
Right, so, and I was, I forget whether I was present or I watched it, but I saw that. But now the question is, what's the next step? What's the status? Where do they go from here now? They were not ready, apparently, for an article to go to special town meeting, but I wouldn't want them to die on the vine and collect like our master plan and our buildings needs plan. I would hope that they would be kept moving forward, and that's why I wanted it discussed.
So the
So what
next
is the next step?
move is for,
Town
I don't know
council.
what. No, I think you just need, I
I'm
don't,
directing my question to the town administrator,
oh,
Carol.
sorry, yeah, I thought you said me. I was,
So Mark, I think where we're at right now is I'll talk to Julia about our next upcoming meetings. We'll probably want to put it before them to the select board to get the select board to opine first and see if there's things they like or don't like, or have further clarification they like on them, and start the traction there and work our way up. We still need to review them with the charter as well as the other bylaws, make sure there's no conflicts. And then once we do that, we'll get it before council. But at this point, you know, until we have another town meeting coming up, we have a little bit of time to go, and I'd rather not expend costs of legal counsel, because they're gonna do the same thing that we can do, right? Double check, make sure there's no conflicts with the charter and stuff first, and get the opinion and any suggestions or questions that the select board has out of the way, and then get a cleaned up document and then get that to legal counsel once we're ready. So it's still moving, Mark. It's not ready for prime time yet, but we are moving.
Anything
And
else?
A final comment that I have, which was not on my request for the agenda, is I would respectfully ask Carol as liaison. I felt that you had numerous occasions to being a board member and being the liaison to the finance committee and being at both committees to speak on the committee's behalf regarding economic development, which you were silent on 2 board meeting occasions, to speak favorably about the bylaws, which you know you've been involved in considering our revision of them and rewriting them for over a year, and you were silent on that. I guess my question then becomes, what's the role of liaison if the liaison's not our voice at the Board of Selectmen meeting, when we can't be our own voice at the Selectmen meeting? I thought there were 2 occasions you could have added to the conversation, spoke favorably about both of those efforts, and you remained silent on both of them. And as a finance committee, I'm not going to lie to you, I find that very disappointing.
so we haven't made up the makeup of the committee. And it wasn't my idea for the Economic Development Committee. My initial request was to have a bylaw revision committee that looked at the zoning bylaws and made them more business friendly, because personally, I believe that we could do a lot more in town if the zoning bylaws weren't as strict. And that was my stance on the master plan implementation committee. So that was my initial request. That committee was formed, never got off the ground. And then out of the blue, the Economic Development Committee was formed, overtaking this one. So it's not my baby per se, but we haven't done a makeup of the committee. And this Economic Development Committee, as was mentioned, it's not a short-term thing. There's nothing to stop, even if a finance member isn't on there, there's nothing to stop a finance member being present, or 2, as long as there's not a quorum, and or if there is, get the meeting posted. There's nothing to stop you attending, giving your input, Because I don't think there's going to be any initial votes. There's a lot of work to be done before any votes are taken. And probably by that time, you may have got your bylaw through to be on other committees, you can get appointed. But at this, there was no discussion. Well, there's no final discussion of the members to be on there. And to be honest, I don't think it would hurt to have a finance committee member on there. I was hoping that you was going to come to town meeting with a bylaw that changed the first line of your old bylaw that said you could be on other committees at the Board of Selectmen's discretion. But that's not what you came with. You changed all your bylaws, you incorporated a lot of things, and then it didn't get to the town meeting because.
So are you going to support a finance committee member being on the economic development committee when that issue is raised at the select board meeting?
So do I go against the bylaws, the current bylaws, or do I say, yes, I think a finance member should be on it regardless of what our bylaws say? I don't think there's a problem with the finance committee member being on there. I don't think there's a problem with I wanted a finance committee member on the town administrator search committee. There was in the past, but the bylaw precluded from that. So I'm not against finance members being on committees. And like I say, I think it was myself that mentioned changing the bylaw at a Board of Selectmen's meeting way back. And that's, I don't know why that didn't happen, but it didn't.
Well, I guess the point, notwithstanding the fact that we gave the bylaws to Heather at the 11th and a half hour, and I respect very much that she needed more time. But now the things that you're speaking of are going to be put off for an entire year until the next annual town meeting, when hopefully these bylaws can be presented to the town meeting, where the hope was they could have been presented to a special town meeting, and some of the things that we're wrestling with would have taken place sooner rather than later. I think we missed an opportunity.
I agree.
It's probably our fault for getting to Heather as late as it did, but it's a big opportunity missed, I think.
And I
So,
agree with that entirely. I honestly hoped that the bylaw would have got changed in time for the town meeting. But Heather asked at the meeting whether you would like it to go forth with any amendments or whether you wanted to come back. She was very forthcoming in that, and it was good on her to ask that question. And again, like I say, it wasn't even discussed because Kirk voted not to put it in the warrant, so for whatever reason. But again, I have no problem with a finance committee member being involved in the economic development committee, and that's what I think Kirk Yules mentioned at the last meeting. I was silent on it because it wasn't my committee. I'll vote on it at a later time, but there was no vote taken, so there was no need for me to say anything personally. And I don't think, as a liaison, I'm supposed to advocate for the finance. I'm here to listen to what you say. If there's anything that needs to come to the Board of Selectmen as a whole, then, and you want me to say it, I'll say it. But I don't think my role is to advocate for the finance committee. I don't think you can do that pretty well on your own. So.
you don't need to advocate for us, particularly there could be occasions where you disagree with our position. My point is at least mention it. There was no mention of the bylaws and there was no mention about economic development. So I've said enough. I've made my point.
Is there any other discussion on any other points?
Rich, are you going to have a public session before you close the meeting tonight?
Yeah, I suppose so.
I'm just waiting. I don't want to jump in until you guys are done with your discussion. So I'll just wait, but I want to make sure you don't close the meeting.
No. If there's no other discussion, we can go into the public session. Okay, go ahead, Neil.
Thank you, Rich. I joined the meeting a little bit late. I apologize for that, but I listened on discussions to members this evening. And one of the things I heard, there is a threshold for the town. Any expenditure for the school district that's above $35,000 has to go before the town. Can I make that assumption as correct at this point?
Any capital item
Okay, thank you. All right, any capital item above $35,000
Yeah,
Comes to the
does not
capital.
get handled by the school district. So why don't we have a procedure in place that the first 35K comes out of the school district? I mean, as everybody said, it's our taxes, whether it's an override, it goes to the school budget, it goes to whatever. But my question is there a way, can we amend the regional agreement? Or it just seems that $35,000 in today's market is so low that, I mean, I would gladly support the 15K from 35 to get to 50. I mean, I do that in a heartbeat, but I'm concerned that we just keep deferring everything back in addition to taxes. Now we're going to have an override, and no one has mentioned yet what that override actually means to each household. So can you enlighten me a little bit on that? If we spend the 50K, and again, I'm in favor of the project, I just want to know the impact. And I'd rather do it tonight at this meeting than if I'm fortunate enough to go to the special town meeting. I'm not even sure I'm going to be available.
that has not been calculated, the actual effect, to the best of my knowledge. Maybe the Heather has done that. I haven't.
So
Heather?
No, I don't have that number, Rich. I thought they had calculated that for the annual, but I'm not sure. But we will most definitely have that before we get to special town meeting.
Yeah,
So that we have that information and, great points. We'll try to collect what we have for information and see if we can even do a news blast or whatever on the website to make sure people have the information and have the tax impact piece as well. Good point.
all right, is that something though that can be put on the electric signs now that we have them? A vote for to pass the measure for the 50K increases everybody's taxes by 11 cents or something, or $10 or whatever?
That's a good question, Neil. I know we just passed our electronic. I don't have a solid answer for you. I think the answer is I'll take that under advisement and look into
Heather,
it and think about it.
these are just discussion points. I'm not asking for, we have to have a decision tonight, but now that we're entering this 21st century age of electronics, I think the more information that we get out there, the better it is for the community.
Rich, this figure has been talked about before, like I said, and based on the FY22 tax rate, the average single family tax impact would be $29.37, but that's only based on FY22 numbers because we can't do an FY23 impact until the tax rate is set. But it has been discussed at a town meeting when the warrant article was discussed.
Carol, is that a per annum number?
Sorry?
Is that a per annum number or is that per month?
It's one year only. It's a capital exclusion that lasts for 1 year only.
Okay, thank you.
So it's roughly $30 per house. Okay.
Okay, Mark?
Rich, can I add to that, Neil? The addition for the recreation lighting is $47.73. So the two of them together are $79.
And that's before any other increases, the 2.5%.
And I think it's important to note that we used ARPA fund money to buy a fire truck to save $58. And in turn, turned around and spent $79.
$58.
And Carol's maintaining that it's one per year, for only 1 year, but as a member of the Finance Committee and the CIPC, I can tell you, we'll be back next year with another $80, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. So that's the type of transparency that I think we're missing, and we don't share openly. I love all our voters dearly, but I can tell you a lot of them don't know what they're voting for. They don't have all the information, and I think it's our responsibility, not theirs, ours, to get that information out to them, and I don't think we do a particularly good job.
Carol?
I was just going to say, I disagree. It was at the Board of Selectmen's meeting. It didn't come up at town meeting, so we didn't discuss it. Anybody can ask for the impact. Generally, we do give that impact, but we didn't even vote on it at town meeting, unfortunately. So.
Wait, didn't vote on what?
On the cameras.
Okay.
Okay, Neil, you have more comments?
Well, No, not at this point. I mean, I enjoyed this forum because it allows me not, sometimes I'm not in town. So as I said, I can sign in from being on the road and I can view this. And I hope you'll continue to do this, or at least I record most of your meetings so I can watch them after the fact and then maybe come to the next meeting that I'm available to and have comment. But I appreciate your recognizing me and letting me speak tonight.
You're welcome. Any other comments? Any other discussion? Okay, now, like I said, if there are, yes, Carol.
Heather, just, is it true after the 15th of July, there's no more Zoom meetings, or has that date been extended?
I understand that it has passed through one part of the government and they're waiting to vote on the other part to extend it another year.
Yeah, okay. I haven't been following that, so,
Yeah.
okay.
So much to Zoom's happiness. Any other discussion on this? Okay, like I mentioned that there will probably be additional transfers, year-end transfers next week. What I would do is contact people to find out if they wish to have anything placed on the agenda. Let me know so that I can put it on the agenda before the 2 days that I have to post a meeting. That's the big problem, is that when it's on Wednesday, I have to get it in the clerk's office by Monday. And I need to know what the agendas are at that point. Are there any other comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second,
Okay, so let's run through the list again. Tony,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Jennifer. I think that was a yes. Mark,
yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
and me, yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, and I'll be in contact with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Have a good night.
Have a
Bye.
good night.